So I know everybody thought WWE Great Balls of Fire was a shitty name, but AEW may have possibly just beat WWE in something else. That's right, guys. AEW has officially announced AEW Full Gear, the pay-per-view that's taking place this upcoming November in Baltimore, Maryland. My name is Ango. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Tango with Ango. Today, we are talking about some major plans that they have for AEW Full Gear. No, it does not revolve around Hangman Page getting a rematch at the World Championship because there is a lot of talk about Chris Jericho's next challenger, and we're going to see what happens. But we're going to talk about it all in today's video, so make sure you guys click that subscribe button. And as always, don't forget to ring that bell. This way you guys get notified on all the latest content. I appreciate you guys for supporting the channel. We are looking to hit 30,000 subscribers by the time Full Gear hits, so make sure you guys click that subscribe button. Guys, let's just kind of talk about it. What is going on with AEW Full Gear? Well, it is a new pay-per-view. A lot of people in this online wrestling community have been pretty negative towards the name, and I understand why. You know, we've kind of become critical of some of the stories and the pay-per-view names that we've seen associated with WWE and even Impact and ROH and pretty much every other company out there that exists. And I think just as time has gone on, pay-per-views have they've kind of lost that specialty. And you know, I got to give WWE props. WrestleMania is the biggest pro wrestling event of the year, regardless of what promotion. This is why promotions have weekly, events during the weekend of WrestleMania. And AEW had officially confirmed that All Out is essentially their WrestleMania. So Tony Khan did confirm that AEW would be in Chicago for Labor Day every weekend. I'm hoping that changes to different states. I'm hoping that it changes to stadiums eventually, but All Out will be the weekly WrestleMania, or the yearly WrestleMania for AEW. But nonetheless, they've come out with this new pay-per-view called Full Gear, and there are some major plans for this pay-per-view that I want to talk about because despite the shitty name, in my opinion, I think Full Gear is really going to be something special for AEW. And that is because, Chris Jericho is the 49-year-old world champion who will be defending his belt against somebody in AEW. And this is a very, very important time for AEW to realize that whoever Chris Jericho faces, they cannot have this person look weak. And the reason why is because this has become a huge issue for WWE and Impact. We have seen time and time again in pro wrestling, this is something that's constantly happening, but we have seen time and time again, somebody gets to compete for the world championship, Braun Strowman, and gets this amazing opportunity to fight for the world championship and loses. And therefore, WWE, as we have seen, has taken a guy like Braun Strowman from the bottom all the way to the top, given him a world championship match and said, he's not ready to win the title. And then by giving him that loss, it just brings him back all the way down even further than where he started. And that is something that pro wrestling companies are starting to make the mistake. So Chris Jericho's first opponent, it's very, very critical that AEW gives it to somebody who can bounce back after a loss. Now, in this situation, wins and losses actually matter. So therefore, Hangman Page, whether he gets a rematch or not will be interesting. But AEW has already alluded, storyline-wise, creatively, that Hangman Page will be versing Pac, which will most likely be taking place at Full Gear, which is huge news because Pac is coming off of a win against Kenny Omega. So in theory, if Kenny Omega just lost to Pac then goes on to beat Hangman Page, then clearly there is a ladder, and Page is going down the ladder, Pac is going up the ladder, and eventually Pac will get that world championship match against Chris Jericho. But in the meantime, who steps up to face Chris Jericho? Well, if you're looking at wins and losses, it's really hard to say because there's only been 4 events. So this is where weekly television is truly make or break for AEW. This is where AEW does not want to become like WWE, because they don't want to take a guy like Pac and immediately feed him to Chris Jericho. You don't want to take a guy like, Cody Rhodes and feed him to Chris Jericho because, Cody is right now, he's doing this whole thing with MJF. You have a lot of good names on your roster, but you have a very small roster. So you don't want to have Cody just randomly be given a world championship because of the fact that, Cody's in a situation where he's within the elite or whatever. So nonetheless, the major plans is Chris Jericho will be defending the title. And I think from what it sounds like, from all the reports that are coming out, it sounds like AEW will be doing something like a Fatal 4-Way match. Which I think Fatal 4-Way, Triple Threat, I think these kind of matches help out in scenarios like this, where somebody like Sammy Guevara, right? We'll just use Sammy Guevara as an example, but a guy like Sammy Guevara, who's talented in the ring, might win a qualifying match to get into the main event, and he could essentially be the guy that takes the pinfall, right? This way you have two other guys who add some value, and they're not going to shoot down the ladder like Braun Strowman did. See, that's the issue with pro wrestling, and this is the issue that AEW could eventually have, is you don't have enough of a roster. You have a very skilled roster, but you don't have enough of a big roster where you can have somebody kind of be that guy to lose. And that's why we have the Dolph Ziglers in the world. Braun Strowman was an example of somebody who should have been a WWE champion right off the bat, like right off the bat. And because they built him up only to bring him down, how many times has this guy lost to Brock Lesnar? How many times has he lost to this person? And now it's not going to be really believable. And AEW just doesn't have a big enough roster to do that. And nonetheless, you don't want AEW to have another Braun Strowman, but you want them to do something special. With that being said, we also have some more news in this video. AEW has signed an independent wrestler to a contract, and this guy is, a lot of people are saying he's going to be the real deal. They did a really good job of presenting a vignette, and the reason why I want to talk about this is because perhaps AEW has found their version of Braun Strowman, or their version of Brian Cage, and that is Wardlow. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, AEW signed a guy named Wardlow to contract. He's an independent wrestler based out of Ohio. And a lot of people are saying, despite the fact that he's not the biggest name in pro wrestling, he is somebody with a large amount of skill, somebody with a nice physique, somebody with a nice look, and by the way, who performs like a heavyweight, but also has a very nice range of moves. And that is incredibly important for AEW, because when you look at the potential world title leaders, you have a lot of smaller guys, and we don't know which route AEW is going to go in regards to who's going to hold what belt, what kind of mid-card belts. But the fact that they've signed a new star to their roster, it's very, very interesting. Wardlow is coming to AEW. The vignette was really sick. When I was watching the vignette, I thought it was like, okay, maybe that's Johnny Impact or Johnny Mundo or John Morrison or whatever you want to call him these days. But I looked at it and I realized that's definitely not him. Then I gave it a second look and I was like, holy shit, Brian Cage is in AEW. And I was like, no, that's not Brian Cage. So what I'm getting at is AEW has somebody who not a lot of people are familiar with, somebody who is big, somebody who is an asset. I want to repeat this, I am not saying AEW should take this guy and put him in the World Championship match, because that would be absolutely ridiculous, because you're only going to have like 4 weeks of TV until pay-per-view, which might be too soon for AEW, by the way. But nonetheless, you're going to have this guy, you're going to have to build him up. It's going to be really interesting. This guy, to me, looks like a heel. So whoever, ever comes into AEW and competes against Chris Jericho, just keep in mind, you need to have somebody who is a real threat and somebody who can take the loss. The way that they're going to build him up, it doesn't seem right to do that to him. So nonetheless, even though they made a new signing, maybe people aren't familiar with him, you don't want to feed him to the World Championship. That would be a really big mistake. Again, you want to avoid the mistakes that WWE are making. Some of the mistakes that WWE are making are very hard to not make. It's very hard to avoid because sometimes they're just the easiest things that slip through the cracks. But nonetheless, AEW has full gear. Chris Jericho, major plans for that belt, being the main event of every pay-per-view, which is really, really interesting. And Chris Jericho, guys, he is going to defend it against somebody. I don't know who it's going to be against, but it's going to be a very, very interesting time for AEW. I want to know what you guys think. Like I said, guys, we are back with daily videos. So you guys clicking that subscribe button and ringing that bell just truly means the world. It helps out so much on this channel. We're going for 30,000 subscribers by November. I think we could do it beforehand, but nonetheless, you guys got to, share the page, let your friends know, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter. We are going to do a giveaway for the month of September. I'm still not sure exactly what we're doing just yet, but we're working on something because going to Chicago for All Out, hanging out with all these YouTubers, hanging out with a lot of people, my cousins, it was a really good time. It was one of those experiences that I'll never forget, and that's because of you guys helping out the channel, growing the channel. AEW has major plans with the world title. They have major plans with Chris Jericho, Hangman Page, and Pac. Should be a great one. Guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. My name is Anthony, Ango, Tony, whatever the hell you want to call me. Destination Pro Wrestling. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.